Boxing Truth here. Let's do a little prediction vid for the fight tonight in Superfly main event out there at the Forum in California. It's a good card. It's the best card HBO has presented to the boxing public this year. They have a genuine 50-50 fight in the main event. It's considered a 50-50 fight. The odds makers have Rungvisai, a slight underdog. Started out as the favorite, but it's the type of fight that many boxing fans of the super flyweight division still contemplating on who to pick. Not really sure how these guys are going to match up. They both have a lot of common opponents. You know, they have history with other fighters that they've dealt with. And now we're going to see who's better between each other. So the triangle theory never really applies, especially when it comes to the top of each weight division. So I'm going to do a little film analysis of both fighters. Not too much, just maybe a couple of rounds. Don't really got time. Just look at how both fighters did with a common opponent, and that's Carlos Cuadras. First, I'm going to start with Rungvisai. Let's fast forward to this. So now we're in the third round. Let's get started with this analysis. And now you see in the beginning of this fight, Cuadras, he always starts out well against most opponents because he's very fast and he's a scrappy fighter that employs movement, likes to use his footwork and try to offset his opponents when they come in. And he did it to both he did it to both Estrada and Rungvisai. They both had trouble with Cuadras' speed, his movement, his rhythm. He likes to move a lot around in that ring, and he's pretty fast. Even though it's kind of deceiving at first, you have to really pay attention to see he's got some good speed and good footwork and fast feet, and that's what makes him a little difficult in the beginning of fights. But he slows down, he loses focus, and then he starts getting hit more, and he can be hurt. And Rungvisai was having trouble with the movement early on. He would attack and get countered constantly the first two rounds, but in the third round he started to impose himself, started to walk Cuadras down with more success, not getting tagged as much when he comes in. He's just pretty much chasing him down. Cuadras moving away, trying to negate Rungvisai's power. And as you can see, that's one of the issues when you fight Rungvisai. He's an awkward guy that leads with his head, whether it's intentional or whether that's just his style, who knows. But it happens in pretty much all of his fights. Well, the fights I've seen him in. He's a guy that leads with his head. He's a southpaw, and conventional guy, southpaw. Shit happens. But he's an awkward guy to fight because of that extra weapon he brings to the ring, because he's constantly leading with his head, and he could psych you out mentally, especially if you have to rematch him. If you come in there not knowing what to expect, you can have a performance like Roman Gonzalez did in the first fight, where he was pretty much dead even with Rungvisai, arguably earned a draw. Lost the fight by a very close decision. And in the rematch, Gonzalez was mentally beat, was worried about Rungvisai's head more so than even Rungvisai's power. And you see Cuadras is able to counter him, able to land shots of his own. You saw some weaknesses early in this fight, as Rungvisai was having trouble with Cuadras' speed. A lot of step back counters and little flurries like that, but they're scoring blows. And Cuadras definitely won the first two rounds of this fight. I felt Rungvisai was starting to turn the tide in the third. As you can see, Cuadras is moving more than what he wants to. sometimes running. So now Rungvisai is getting stronger. He's starting to employ the pressure. Cuadras is slowing down. You know, a lot of energy he's expending with that movement, all those feints. And now Rungvisai is starting to have some better moments, nice body shot. And every time Rungvisai hits him hard, another good right hand to the body, Cuadras is on his bicycle, running for his life, on the run. And he constantly did it throughout the fight. Rungvisai would tag him to the body or hit him with a big hard shot, and Cuadras would run away and try to recover. And he's got some really fast recovery time, Cuadras does. He's a very suspicious fighter. I mean, Cuadras, he's a prince of WBC. He's a guy that's very hard to get a decision, even though he clearly loses the fight. Just ask David Carmona. He's very privileged, gifted. He has personality and he has star appeal, so that's why he's somewhat protected and gifted by WBC. He received the gift decision, nice uppercuts by Rungvisai, as he's starting to have the best success of the fight so far. He's a privileged fighter, Cuadras, and got a gift decision in this fight. I don't believe Rungvisai was behind. I felt he turned the tide and was starting to put a whooping on Cuadras as the fight proceeded, and then a clash of heads occurred in the 8th round, and he was deducted a point. Prior to that, he was putting a whooping on Cuadras, had him running for his dear life, hurt him with body shots, counter body shots. So Rungvisai, he's sturdy, he's very confident. He's a pressure fighter that throws a lot of punches, shows great conditioning, great power. If you want to have the best chance of beating him, you have to employ Cuadras' style that he employed in the first 2 rounds. Step back, move around, counter him when he attacks, and you can have some success. But whether you can slow him down or whether you could gas him out, that's another question. Because he keeps coming and he keeps punching and he keeps walking you down, and he punches from round 1 to round 12. So he's got a lot of desire to win. He's at a sky-high type confidence. He's a champion. He's knocked out the pound-for-pound king, dethroned Roman Gonzalez. So it's hard to go against Rungvisai in this fight, especially since he was able to deal with Cuadras and lost the fight controversially. Prior to that, he was on a winning streak, was knocking guys out, was a champion, made some defenses, and then got totally screwed in Mexico against Cuadras. So now let's look at Estrada's style, see how he does. My bad, this is the highlights. I don't really have the actual fight. So in this fight, the same thing happened in the beginning. Cuadras was out working him, out hustling him, was faster than Estrada, was just pretty much out punching him, out working him, and just showing more activity. As Estrada, he's an excellent fighter, but one of his faults is that he's too patient, can go spurts without really throwing many punches. He throws good combinations when he does throws, but he's inconsistent in that department. Whether it's he's pacing himself for the later rounds, or he's just naturally a slow starter. I would say he's a slow starter. It takes him some rounds to get warmed up, but when he does, he can really put it on you. And he put it on Cuadras in this fight. I mean, he got off to a bad start, lost the first 2 rounds, but then just like Rungvisai, he turned the tide in the 3rd, and he never looked back. Estrada was very effective in this fight. I thought he beat Cuadras pretty handily, won at least 8 or 9 rounds. Didn't lose many rounds after the 2nd, that's for sure. He was able to out-counter him, out-punch him, land the cleaner, bigger shots, and he also recorded the knockdown that officially won him the fight. All 3 judges scored at 114-113 in favor of Estrada. Without the knockdown, the fight is a draw, and Estrada wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to fight Rungvisai next. So, like I said earlier in this video, for some strange reason, it's very difficult to get a decision against Carlos Cuadras. Just ask Sor Rungvisai, just ask David Carmona, and luckily for Estrada, if he didn't knock him down, he wouldn't have gotten the decision. So you can handily beat Carlos Cuadras, and somehow you end up with a loss in your record. Get your strap taken away, or you just get flat out robbed, like in the case of David Carmona. So they're gonna continue to protect this chump Cuadras. They're gonna try to build him back up with a win over McWilliams Arroyo. Hopefully Arroyo knocks this chump out. Cuadras ain't that good, but he's a protected fighter, and it's very difficult to get a decision. But Estrada cleanly beat Cuadras. Thought he outclassed him. Thought he was the clearly better fighter of the two. It wasn't that close. I thought he beat him just as handily as Roman did. Maybe did a little better, since Roman got slowed down in that fight, got busted up late. Estrada didn't slow down. So Estrada does have good conditioning. He's gone, he's had some good 12-round fights. Has shown, superior conditioning against both opponents. Good combinations, good counters. Very creative with his counters as well. Hooks, uppercuts. He's got good technique. The thing is, though, he's a slow starter. Doesn't let his hands go all the time. Can give away rounds early. He's not the fastest. He doesn't have this type of speed that Cuadras has. And he's not as good as fighter as Roman Gonzalez. He's just not. They both handled Cuadras around the same level, but when it came to their fight together, I don't understand all the commotion. I thought Gonzalez handily and clearly beat Juan Francisco Estrada. That fight wasn't even that competitive. Wasn't even that close. One of the judges had a 118-110 for Roman Gonzalez. I mean, you can make an argument it was that type of fight. I mean, it was a lively fight to where, a guy who didn't quit and showed heart and tried to hang in there, but he was thoroughly outmatched, walked down, and outworked, outpunched in every facet of the game. He just couldn't deal with the pressure, and Roman Gonzalez just showed superior strength. So Gonzalez, to me, is the more physically stronger of the two. He's the better fighter, better combination puncher, throws more punches. It's just that Estrada can change his style, but he's not this outboxer that some people like to describe him as. He doesn't have that quick footwork or that type of quick speed to where Rungvisai won't be able to trap him and do some damage, especially when Estrada decides to stay in the pocket. But he has a great, he has a good gas tank. He has heart. He's tough. I'm not sure if Rungvisai can KO him, but I definitely think Rungvisai can do damage. I think he could outpunch him and steal some rounds with his his better activity, to where Estrada will get out hustled in this fight. But it's gonna be interesting late to see who is the stronger of the two when it comes to conditioning and punching power. It's a good fight. It's a good matchup. It's the triangle theory doesn't always apply. Estrada has a different style compared to Cuadras and Gonzalez, but Gonzalez is clearly, to me, the better fighter of the two, and Rungvisai knocked him out in the second fight and arguably beat him in the first fight. So I see a tough fight, but I have to go with Rungvisai to maintain and defend his WC strap, remain champion in a very good competitive battle, but to where Rungvisai just outworks, outpunches, and lands the better, more bigger firepower of the two, to where he earns a clear but close unanimous decision. Y'all let me know what y'all think about the fight. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.